Greetings, YouTube, and welcome to episode 20 of the Encyclopedia Magica Volume 1. If I remember correctly, we were still looking at arrows. Well, let's get this open and we'll find out. Yes, we are still in arrows, and we had just finished the Fs. So now we're into the Arrow of Harm. Alrighty. This arrow does double normal damage to one specific type of creature. Okay, so it's the arrow of slaying. So how the heck is it just different? How is this different than an arrow of slaying is different from it? This just does extra damage. It does double damage. So because you don't get a saving throw against that. So yeah, there's a slight difference, but you're splitting hairs there. It still does extra damage to a particular creature type. All right, so we have an arrow of holding. This mystical arrow, oh sorry, I forgot to tell you, the arrow of harm was 80 XP and 480 GP, and the arrow of holding is 50 XP and 300 GP. This mystical arrow is inscribed with strange runes. When it hits its target, the target must make a saving throw, spell, or freeze as if affected by a hold spell. Effect lasts for 2d4 rounds. The victim takes no other damage. So the arrow doesn't do damage. It just allows a non-spellcaster to pin a person in place. Hopefully, a spellcaster. That would be very useful. Non-spellcasters being able to pin the spellcasters in place that could potentially harm their party. Yeah, it could be very dangerous. Okay, then we have the Arrow of Holding Mark II. That's 50 XP and 100 GP. This is from the Ruins of Undermountain. These finely made arrows are usually crafted by elves, but the secret of their manufacturings are known to a few craftsmen of all races. Such arrows count as magical arrows. Yeah. The strike of an arrow of holding does only 1 point of damage, but these arrows pierce any armor, so it's a touch attack. On striking, the arrow vanishes in a pulse of silvery radiance, and the target must make a saving throw or be affected by a hold person for 5 plus 1d4 rounds. So it's very similar to the arrow of holding, but a little bit more detail, and making it a touch attack is quite useful. I like the idea of a touch attack. It makes a lot of sense to me that just hitting a target is more important than aiming to harm a target specifically, because you're going for chinks in the armor, if you will, looking for weak spots. Whereas a touch attack, you're just trying to hit the silhouette. There's a silhouette in front of you of a shape. You're just aiming at the silhouette. You don't care where it lands, because it'll affect the creature no matter where it lands. Okay, and we have the Arrow of Ice, 10 XP, 50 GP for polyhedron, craft of solid steel. These arrows radiate alteration magic and are cold to the touch. When fired, they transform themselves into 18-inch icicle that do an additional 1d6 damage to fire using or fire-dwelling creatures. They have no magical bonus. They are found in clutches of 1d8. No magical bonus doesn't specify that they are considered magical attacks, as that they aren't. It could be very likely that they wouldn't harm the creature unless you consider it to be an elemental attack in the sense that it's an energy type. Yeah, maybe. It's kind of very specific. I can see why the cost is so low, because it's a very niche market for that. Very niche target. Ha, I get it, target. Okay, Arrow of Illumination, 30 XP, 180 GP from polyhedron. When fired, this arrow levitates to a point 3 feet above the archer's head. The arrow follows the archer as he or she travels, adjusting its height of the ceiling lower. If the ceiling lowers, the arrow glows with the equivalent of a light spell and functions for 24 turns, or until it is broken. Usually 2d4 of these arrows are found together. So it's just a light spell that follows you around. You can also do that with a dead Ioun stone. You just take a dead Ioun stone, because they still orbit even if they have no power, and you just cast like continual flame or something like that on them, and then it just orbits around. You got a light source, hands free. So that's a use for right there for an Ioun stone that's dead. the Arrow of Illusionary Missiles, 10 XP, 100 GP. They're illusionary missiles of various types to complement illusionary weapons and armor. The sticks and stones are tiny things totally useless in battle or normally. When the command word is spoken, a faintly visible magical field surrounds them, stretching them out to the proportions of a regular missile. Okay. Then it does no damage itself. It is substantial enough to enable the missile to be handled. If the enemy sees one of these missiles, the foe will probably assume the worst and take damage equivalent to that. So it's a psychic attack, essentially. It's doing psychic damage. If you believe it's going to hurt you, it hurts you. So you probably get a saving throw on that one. That's what I would do. I would probably call it psychic damage, simply because you've been psyched into believing it's going to hurt you, and if it hits you and you believe it, it hurts you. We have the Arrow of Justice. That's a good name, Arrow of Justice. 200 XP and 400 GP. That's a low ratio. All Shire sheriffs carry 1d8 arrows of justice in their boots or through their belts. Carrying arrows in your boots is a really bad idea. They remain inactive in the hands of anybody but a halfling. When cast by a halfling, a visible target, the Arrow of Justice, flashes unerringly to strike the creature as a magic missile, following it around obstruction. So that's kind of cool. The touch of the Arrow of Justice may deal 2d6 points of damage or merely root the subject to the spot. So it just parallels this. It may be mentally committed to cause both effects when it is released. If not committed, it always deals damage. Creature struck by an Arrow of Justice glows with a silvery radiance for 3d6 rounds. The effect foils attempts to hide, so fairy fire, essentially. The master and keepers construct these items to see in secrecy, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it's just a useful tool for capturing subjects, people that have been on the run. The Arrow of Law, also a good name. 200 XP, 400 GP. This is from Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. This is found as a quiver of 20 arrows. The arrows always hit and kill chaotic creatures at normal long bow ranges. They always hit and kill chaotic creatures? And they're only 400 gold pieces a piece? What GM would allow that in their game? Do you know how many creatures out there are chaotic and really dangerous? How many big, powerful demons are there? And you're telling me if you hit one of those powerful demons with one of these things, you banish its corporeal form and drive them back to the lower planes? That seems to be a really good deal for 400 GP. Okay, we have the Arrow of Light, 40 XP, 120 GP. They are among the most permanent and common of all spelled arrows. If a continual light spell is cast upon the shaft of an arrow, it then be used to either spotlight or blind an enemy. These arrows are common among elf scouts who carry them sheathed until there is a need for them. So it's a light spell you can fire somewhere. Makes me think of the light spell from Skyrim. You just go, a little ball sticks to the wall, that kind of thing. You actually stick them to people, which is kind of cool too. Then we have the Arrow, what am I doing for time here? Okay, we have the Arrow of Lighting, more lighting. 50 XP, 100 GP from Dungeons & Dragons Rules Encyclopedia. The missile can create a light spell effect 30-foot diameter, either upon a command or when it hits a target. The creature hit, the victim must make a saving throw or be blinded by the light. That makes sense. Okay, now we have the Arrow of Lightning, 100 XP, 600 GP, Dragon Magazine. The arrow has a +2 bonus attack rolls and causes 1d6 hit points damage plus 20 hit points electrical damage. Excuse me, burping there. 1d6 sounds low. Okay. When the arrow hits, it emits a large and bright flash of light for a split second, long enough to light up a dungeon corridor. Anyone touching the victim suffer 1d10 electrical damage, and the arrow is consumed in the lightning. The arrow missile is intended target. It discards all of its electrical energy upon hitting the arrow. The ground or any other solid object such as a dungeon wall. That could still be useful because electrical energy can set off oil or other flammables, like, or gas. There's like, if you're firing down into an area where there's a natural dip and gas, methane gas or something has collected down there, this missile could be used as a touch. Potentially, if you hit a target, it's still going to set the gas off. So yeah, that could be really dangerous. Not a bad video at 600 GP. All right, then we have the Arrow of Lycanthrope Slaying, 200 XP, 1200 GP from Dragon Magazine. This silver-tipped arrow not only gives a +3 bonus attack and damage rolls, but also slays any lycanthrope it strikes, whether in beast or human form, unless the creature struck makes a saving throw versus death magic. The saving throw causes the victim to take double damage from the arrow. I'm reminded of some horror comedy where this person's about to drive a stake through someone's heart. Says this will prove that if this kills them, this will prove that they're a vampire. And their assistant's like, wouldn't that kill a normal person? Yes, it will. Oh, and by the way, the iron arrow from the previous page, that's not going to go far. You put a solid iron arrow in a bow, and it's going to go feet. Yeah, I know it's magic, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, try that. Put a solid steel shaft shaped like an arrow and fire it and see how far it goes. I'd be entertained by that. That would make me smile. Alrighty, so we're gonna see when we're gonna go. We'll go up to O today. So we have the, oh wow, this is a bad one. Maglubalyets Wounding, 500 XP, 2500 GP from Dungeon. These arrows have been enchanted by whatever that guy's name, a goblin deity. They can only be enscrolled through diligent prayer and ceremony. They can be used only once and are +2 to hit and damage. Creature struck by the arrow loses half of strength immediately, in addition to the arrow's damage. If the arrow remains in the wound, the creature does not regain strength or magical abilities and cannot heal its wounds, even at normal rates. Goblins normally use these arrows against monsters that have no hands, so the arrow cannot be removed. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Pardon me. The Arrow of Misdirection, no XP value, GP 100. The arrow is similar to an arrow of direction. Difference is that these cursed arrows reveal the wrong directions. Yeah, it's kind of funny. We have the Missile Weapon of Accuracy, 50 XP, 300 GP, the Oriental Adventures, which is a problematic term now. These magical missile weapons is a +3 to both attacks and damage. Furthermore, all ranges are considered to be short range, no range modifiers. That's really damn powerful. It's got a lot of bonus to hit and damage, +3, and everything is considered short range. That's powerful. Then we have the Missile Weapon of Distance, and it's got a little asterisk next to it. I don't remember what that is considered, and this is +50 XP and +300 GP. So this sounds like something you could add on to something else. The weapon is able to fire to double all normal range categories for the weapon. There's a lot of range increasing arrows in here. You really should have rolled them into certain, like, one entry. You would have saved yourself some space, but I understand that this is a documentation of everything that was available at the time this book was printed. Then we have the Arrow of Multiplication for every 100 XP, 600 GP from Dragon. For every 30 feet this arrow travels, another arrow appears in flight alongside the original, up to a total of 10 arrows. Each arrow receives an individual attack roll and no bonus. For example, a fighter fires one of these arrows with a bow +3. The arrow travels a distance of 65 feet. 3 arrows reach the target, each of them having normal attack chances, counting none from the magical bow. Still quite powerful and encouraging the bow user to hit far targets. Because if you shoot a big target at more than 100 feet, and that's not hard to do if you got a longbow, a composite longbow, you're gonna be laying some hurt on that dude. That's 10 potential attacks. Wow, that's kind of cool. And then lastly, we have the Arrow of Nilbog, which is Goblin backwards. XP 100, GP 150 from Polyhedron. Nondescript in appearance, these arrows have an odd power. Due to the unusual enchantment, the target is cured of 1d6 hit points upon contact. As a final touch, the arrows create an illusion of damage upon the target, dents in armor, torn clothing, etc. The illusion lasts one turn. Nilbog arrows are found in clutches of 1d8. So it heals the person, but makes them look wounded. Now that could be interesting if it was considered to be friendly fire. So a goblin, seeing that one of its compatriots has been injured, uses one of these arrows, and the player characters are going to think that the guy just missed the player and hit one of their own, while in actuality, they just healed the guy in front of them. Interesting. You don't see arrows that kind of give you some kind of like strategic advantage like that. Huh. I never thought of that, which is kind of sad. But I didn't. But kind of cool. All right. So thank you for being here for episode 20 of the Magical Encyclopedia Volume 1. We are not even very far into this. As you can see, we are not very far into this. But I'm having a good time, and it is a journey down memory lane. Oh, yeah, one thing we did, I can remember we had customized spells I used to use back in 2nd edition. I would use it for any edition if anybody asked, which essentially was to take the serial numbers off a spell and reconfigure it without changing its stats. So you're basically changing the appearance of a spell. So one of the guys had a spell, it was a version of Fireball, did exactly the same thing as Fireball, but it was called so-and-so's Rain of Fiery Death. And when he fired it, it was a missile that looked kind of like a flaming arrow, and it would be one missile for every target in the zone. That would be the fireball. So it just looked like this fiery arrow, and as the arrow got closer, till there was many of them, and then they would and like, heat-seeking missiles. But it was just a fireball spell with, tinkered to give a different appearance. But it was quite cool looking and terrified people because they had never seen it before. I always quite like that. Alrighty, so thanks for being here for episode 20. Hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you'll come back for episode 21.